Good morning to all our participants in the UK and good afternoon to all our participants in this part of the world. Thank you for joining today's BMCC Trade Webinar Series. We are proud to welcome attendees from different countries, and additionally, we are glad to see that there is quite a number of interest in this event. We would also like to thank all our partners and fellow chambers in the UK for supporting us and promoting this webinar. So today's topic will be opportunities in the food and drink sector with a focus on Malaysia. My name is Samantha, and I am a Trade and Engagement Manager at the BMCC. Today, we are pleased to collaborate with the Food Purveyor, a member of the BMCC, Christie International, Santander Bank UK, as well as the UK-ASEAN Business Council, our key partner in the UK. In today's session, our experts will be focusing on COVID-19 in Malaysia, the outlook and challenges on the F&D sector, perspective from a UK F&D company, opportunities in the Halal sector, as well as overview on the UK F&D sector and routes to market in Malaysia. So joining us today from BMCC, our very own Executive Director, Jennifer Lopez, who will be giving a brief introduction to our chamber and a quick overview on Malaysia. From UK ABC, we have Paul North, Director of Trade, who will be sharing about the opportunities for UK businesses in ASEAN. From the Food Purveyor, we have CEO Geoff, who will be talking about the outlook and challenges in the F&D sector in Malaysia. Phil Walker, Export Manager at Christie International, will also be sharing about the perspective from a UK F&D company. And from Santander UK, we have Vikrama Kumaravil, Asian Desk Director, who will be talking about opportunities in the Halal sector. And last but not least, we will be having Andrew Williams, Head of Food and Drinks Sector at Santander UK, who will be sharing insights on the overview of UK's F&D sector and routes to market in Malaysia. So, before I pass the session over to our speakers, just a note, if you have any questions to ask during the session, please submit your questions via the Q&A function available and not the chat function. We will then moderate the questions to answer during the Q&A session after the presentations. And without further ado, I would like to pass the session over to Jennifer Lopez.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning to all our audience in the UK and good afternoon to everyone in Malaysia and the ASEAN region. Firstly, on behalf of the BMCC, I would like to thank all our speakers for joining us for this session. I believe it will be an interesting session. So I wish everyone a good, enjoyable and interesting upcoming session. What I'll do is I'll do a brief, as Sam mentioned, a brief introduction to Malaysia, opportunities for UK companies in Malaysia, and the role of the Chamber, the British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce. Our aim is to be your business partner in Malaysia in playing a key role in supporting UK businesses in the market. So next slide, please. So to give everyone a quick overview of Malaysia, if you're not familiar with Malaysia, Malaysia is strategically located in the heart of Southeast Asia. And we always trust and share with our potential investors and UK companies that Malaysia offers a cost-competitive location for companies to set up regional operations in ASEAN. Later, my fellow speaker will share briefly on ASEAN and where Malaysia is positioned in. Malaysia comprises 13 states and 3 federal territories. We have 2 regions. If you're not familiar, we separated the Peninsular Malaysia, which is in the south of Thailand and above Singapore, and separated by the South China Sea, and we also have the Borneo Islands bordering Indonesia and Brunei. With a 32 million population, we are multi-ethnic, multicultural. We speak different languages, mainly English as business language, and of course, Malay is our national language. We also are very strong in speaking Mandarin. So companies do see, multinationals do see Malaysia as a strategic location because of the talent. And the government continuously, even during this post-pandemic, we are moving into post-COVID-19 pandemic, the government is continuously putting in efforts to upgrade the talent to remain relevant for the market. We have a strong focus on digital infrastructure and transformation, and this has even become more important in the current situations. And we are moving towards a knowledgeable, high-tech, innovation-based economy, where we find that UK companies have great opportunity to promote your services, your high-tech solutions to Malaysia. As I mentioned, Malaysia is in the heart of Southeast Asia, and it's a strategic location to have it as your gateway to ASEAN. Next slide, please. Okay, just a snapshot of the opportunities for UK companies, as today's session is on food and drinks. So the opportunities to start off will be to give you an overview on tech. Technology is definitely has become even more important. We see opportunities for UK companies in cybersecurity, fintech, artificial intelligence. When you relate to food and drinks or retail, e-commerce has become very key. Our speakers will share more in terms of food and drinks and retail. And also the government has putting efforts which will pick up soon, because we are opening up for business again after post-pandemic, will be on smart cities. In terms of education, UK continues to have a strong foothold in education in Malaysia due to the long relationship between UK and Malaysia. UK education is highly regarded. So currently, some of the opportunities that we're looking for education will be on, again, related to digital solutions for train-the-trainers, education technology, STEM subjects, high-tech vocational training, virtual reality learning, and also leadership and management in IR 4.0. These are some of the need for education in Malaysia. So if anyone is keen, can reach out to us. In terms of food and drinks, I won't touch much. Later, week we'll talk about the halal food, and also our speakers will share how the e-commerce has boomed. So on that note, it is encouraging to hear that the UK government yesterday announced their plan to support the food and drinks manufacturers and exporters. Some of the plans that was interesting to hear was the launch of the SME e-commerce accelerator pilot. So to encourage UK food and drink manufacturers and players to start exporting, looking at the e-commerce market. So, and then ASEAN or Malaysia is a good strategic market for you to consider when you're moving into e-commerce. Yeah. So the other sectors will be energy, oil and gas. In terms of digitalization and solutions for optimization, cost saving will be in demand. And also renewable energy. When you move on to advanced manufacturing, always adoption of Industry 4.0 for the electrical and electronic industry, manufacturing, and also green technology. Healthcare, recently has become much more in demand in terms of digital solutions. Things that we are looking at is integrated patient record keeping, telemedicine, because we have a vibrant private hospital sector. So private hospitals are always looking for upgrading their specialist facilities, and this is also in relation to Malaysia promoting healthcare tourism, and infrastructure is picking up more. So if you're keen to know more about this, you can always reach out to all of us at the chamber. Next slide, please. Why Malaysia? Briefly, a vibrant business environment. I hope our speakers can, share more on that. There are, government policies that are supportive to attract, investors and exporters into the country. Attractive tax incentives, as I've already mentioned about the educated workforce, and the developed infrastructure itself allows company to position Malaysia as a regional, hub to export around ASEAN itself. Next slide, please. So just to share with you a blend of UK companies in Malaysia, a snapshot. UK companies in Malaysia are very established for many, many years, and we continue to see the demand for UK products and services. That's why the Chamber is here to support you together with the Department for International Trade. Next slide, please. So what is the role of the Chamber? As a Chamber, we provide networking and business B2B engagement. Very importantly, in today's environment, we see more and more our members coming to us in terms of branding and opportunities for profiling their products and services in the market. So we just don't provide platforms for digital platforms. We also work with our members. For example, in webinars like this, we collaborate and we work with our members. So that gives an opportunity for our members to position themselves together with us, an opportunity to build their network. We facilitate B2 government engagement, and importantly, we provide trade and market entry services. The Chamber in Malaysia is very well established. We've been established for more than 55 years. So we have strong relationships. We have built good relationships with the regulators, good relationships with British companies in Malaysia and also Malaysian companies. So there's huge opportunity for us to support you in terms of building your network and business in Malaysia. Next slide, please. Quickly, the trade services that we offer, market access information like webinars such as this. We also produce reports, B2B matching, one-to-one clinics for UK companies to understand better. We organize bespoke events like product launches, roundtables for UK companies who would like to reach out to target clients or their own customers. We also organize trade roadshows, missions, exhibitions. You'll see one of our speakers actually, Phil, participated in the Food is Great campaign, and I think Phil will agree with me to say that he found it really valuable to be physically, in the same booth with all the as a UK pavilion. So that's the positioning and branding opportunity that the Chamber can provide for UK businesses in Malaysia. So next slide, please. And we want to also share that we are part of the Britain in Southeast Asia. So if you are looking to come into ASEAN, you can reach out to Malaysia, and we will be happy to introduce you to our colleagues in the other region. Likewise, our colleagues in the other ASEAN countries will do the same. Next slide, please. So with that, just a quick snapshot and overview of Malaysia and the Chamber and how we can support you. Please do reach out to us if you are thinking about market entry. For chambers, I know there are a few number of participants from other chambers in the UK. We will be very pleased to work with respective chambers in the UK to organize webinars, info sharing, one-to-one clinics with our fellow chambers in the UK to reach out to your members. Thank you. Can I pass on to Paul to share the next session?
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you to the Business Council really to allow us to talk a little bit about ASEAN today and the opportunities and what we do as a business council. So good morning to everybody here in the UK and good afternoon to our colleagues that have joined from Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. So, the Association of Southeast Nations, what is it? It was established back in 1967, really to accelerate cultural development, economic growth and social progress throughout the region. And since 1967, it's grown to include those 10 countries that you see on the map. And they are all very diverse, economically, culturally and politically, from the high-tech market of Singapore to the recently opened up market of Myanmar, a country that has nothing and needs everything. ASEAN is strategically placed as a geographical hub between China and India, having a really young and dynamic consumer market with a population of over 640 million and an average age of just 26 years. ASEAN is similar in part to other single markets with the slow and steady integration of economies, but with no common currency and no free movement of people. The region is spending around 45 billion a year and will continue, hopefully, after post-COVID on infrastructure projects. And along with that comes, of course, a lot of other sector opportunities. Next slide, please. So the region really has, pre-COVID, really been growing at some extremely high rates of between 5 to 7%. There's a huge, diverse and multilingual talent pool of, as I mentioned, 640 million people. And this created a huge middle-class consumer base where we've seen GDP per capita rising 70% growth from 2007 to present day. There has been and will continue massive infrastructure project investment, a huge amount of FDI from China, Japan, the likes of Korea. And long-term, ASEAN's growth will continue to be shaped by economic policies, regional trade policies, investment incentives, infrastructure, and financing. Like all markets, we have seen a decline in the growth within ASEAN. However, because it is such a strong economy, it is predicted that ASEAN will be one of the first economies to bounce back. And some people have said it'll be the first region to bounce back and continue those huge growth rates that we've seen in the past. Next slide, please. So where do we fit in? Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I'll go on to this slide. So I just want to talk a little bit about the sectors in the region. These are high value sector opportunities where the government sees that they can add value and it's a strong return on investment for UK exporters. And as I say, these are some, as you see, the big sectors across the region: education and infrastructure and tech. Next slide, please. But don't worry if you're not in those sectors. This webinar is going to be about food and drink. And this is a snapshot of recent export opportunities. And you can see there, this was based around 26 sectors. And the ones that are underlined there are the 5 top sectors which have been identified where there's been the most export opportunities. And as you can see there, food and drink and retail and luxury were at the top of those 5. Next slide, please. So where do we fit in? The UK-ASEAN Business Council. We are the leading UK organisation promoting trade and investment between the UK and ASEAN's dynamic markets. We were created out of the then UK Trade and Investment, now the Department for International Trade, as part of Britain's Open for Business strategy. We are a standalone and business council and have been for many, many years. And we help UK companies of all sizes build new contacts, provide market insights, and raise the awareness of the vast commercial opportunities and developments in what is undoubtedly one of the most exciting, vibrant, and will continue to be the fastest growing region in the world. We also bring ASEAN to the UK through a sustained calendar of events, and that is ranging from country briefings, from targeted meetings, virtual one-to-one clinics at this moment in time, and promotional events. So we are doing, as many people are, ramping up our virtual events. We signpost also practical advice and guidance on how to do business in ASEAN and can provide access to a considerable network of useful contacts. Next slide, please. So Jennifer mentioned our collective colleagues in the region, the British Chambers of Commerce, known under the umbrella of Britain in Southeast Asia. And they are the organisations in the region who are delivering not just services that the Chamber of Commerce would deliver here in the UK, but they are also delivering market entry services, which Jennifer has mentioned, and I don't want to go over that. But just to mention that the guys do come in and have been coming in twice a year, April and October. They were here just before the lockdown in March. I don't think we will see them in October. We are looking to do something virtually with them, but hopefully next year they'll be back coming into the UK. And this is a great opportunity. They are traveling around the regions for 7 or 10 days, and it's a great opportunity for UK companies to be put in front of an expert from the market who can tell you whether there is an opportunity for your products or services. Next slide, please. So just to mention that we work closely with the UK and ASEAN governments. We work also with key partner organisations, including the British Chambers of Commerce in ASEAN, influential corporates, experienced SMEs, market experts and professional services providers. And we have created a huge, extensive UK-ASEAN business network that links UK innovation and expertise with ASEAN's commercial developments. And that's something that we can certainly hook you into. Next slide, please. So again, just to mention some of our partners there, the ones on the top line are our corporate partners of the UK-ASEAN Business Council. You can see that there are some big names there and quite influential, not just here in the UK, but also in the markets in ASEAN. Another opportunity to hook you into our partner network there. Next slide, please. So I do encourage you to visit our website where there's a huge amount of information. Next slide, please. Huge information on doing business in the region, so a lot of publications there that are downloadable. We also have our full events program there, upcoming events, not just what we're doing here in the UK, but also what is happening in ASEAN. And then also the opportunities there that are available within ASEAN for businesses who can hook into those export opportunities. Next slide, please. So this is us. We're a very small but very effective team based in London, Millbank Tower there. For those of you who don't know that, it's just down from the Houses of Parliament, and we're up there on the 5th floor. So next slide, please. And that's me. That's the end of my presentation. If you've got any further questions or details that you'd like to know from us, there's my contact details there. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. So I'd now like to hand over to Geoff King, who is the CEO of the Food Purveyor based in Kuala Lumpur. Over to you, Geoff.
Thank you, Paul. And good afternoon, everyone from the UK, and good morning. No, sorry, good afternoon for everyone in Malaysia, and good morning to everyone in the UK. I'll get that right. Yes, my name's Geoff King. I'm the CEO of the Food Purveyor. I'll tell you a minute about who the Food Purveyor are and really what we've been up to over the last 3 or 4 months, and how that changes our outlook to product for sale in Malaysia. And the opportunities that brings to us going forward as the COVID pandemic declines and wanes. Okay, on the next slide, please, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are. We currently have 3 brands. We're expanding our brands to a 4th brand very, very soon. But effectively, we're in the upmarket, mid to upmarket food retail business. Our main fascia is Village Grocer. That's been established since 2004. We now have 20 Village Grocer stores, and we acquired the Big Group in 2017, and that was established in 2011, and now we've expanded that chain to 7 stores. Both of those fascias appeal to an upmarket audience. Below, you can see the 5 attributes that we say that single us out as different to other food retailers in the region. Basically, we're located in the best malls. A lot of the mall landlords come to us first and want us to be the anchor tenant of their mall, which is great. We're highly skilled in fresh food, so about 50% of our turnover is fresh food. We spend a lot of care over our fruits and vegetables and our poultry and our meats. And we have a lot of experience and skill in maintaining the freshness in what is otherwise a difficult supply chain arena in Malaysia for fresh food. Another factor that singles us out is our imported range. So we import from the UK, other European countries, Australia, Korea, Taiwan, China, Japan, and America, but mainly Australia and the UK are our dominant import markets, and that's what we're famous for. We probably carry a much larger range than any other retailer in Malaysia, and a lot of that is different to what is otherwise available. And we have high brand affinity. So people like us, we've built a loyalty over a period of years. It's easy to lose customers and it's hard to keep customers. And I think that our attention to customer service and keeping our customers happy has kept that business or kept that customer base maintained and engaged. And really the map of Malaysia at the top right there shows we're totally centric in Kuala Lumpur. We now have 4 stores in Johor Bahru, which is neighbouring Singapore, and we get a lot of crossover business when there is no quarantine restrictions from Singapore. And also it's a big Chinese tourism area. So those are the 2 conurbations that we're majoring on. We will be expanding to Penang and to other areas in time. But really, our stores do appeal to a segment of the population that is broadly centric to those geographical areas. Okay, if we move on, I'll tell you a bit about what happened during COVID-19 outbreak. So this is data from March to May. And it just shows some of the phenomenal growth our business experienced in certain areas as customer demand went through the roof. I don't think particularly we as a business performed any differently to other food retailers. I'd like to think we did better, but I think every food retailer experienced a huge amount of uplift in demand. Really, the government shut down every other restaurant and eating place, sent workers home, sent school kids home. So really we had a very captive market and a unique place in our malls. We were, us and the health and beauty retailers were the only tenants that open in the malls. So we had a very big focus, great big pressure and responsibility. And you can see here the fresh business did particularly well. You know, organic vegetables, simple product like potatoes and onions, and all our proteins over doubled in size over those 3 months. Frozen did particularly well as people hoarded up and stored for longer, didn't want to go to the store so frequently, so we had less visits and higher spend in the visits we had. The next 3 boxes, butter and cheese, milk and cream, baking ingredients, really shows that you know, school kids were at home, which is one of the reasons, but a lot of the community found they had a lot of spare time, were fairly bored in these 3 months, and therefore experimented with food, particularly baking and cooking. And these are the ingredients that, you know, we could never keep in stock of. So yeast, flour, self-raising flour and creams, really hard to keep in stock. And whenever that we got the imports in or the products delivered from the suppliers, they sold out within days. And then the toilet roll phenomenon was famous in March, where, you know, all retailers across the world, the shelves were stripped bare of toilet rolls, but that extended to paper towels, sterilizing liquids, sanitizers, hand washes, even washing up liquids, all sold out and sold through very fast. And on the bottom right there is a box. We never sold face masks before the pandemic, and in the last 3 months we've actually sold over 250,000 pieces of face masks to our customers. So it just shows you've got to be nimble and agile to capture markets as they evolve, you know, and be able to catch the waves as they arrive and not watch them go and somebody else benefit. So that leads me on to talking about the next slide, which is what did we learn during this period of time. First and foremost, I think it was so important to put our staff health and welfare at first, and also our customers' welfare first. So there was a huge fear of safety. We spent a lot of money on sanitizing, temperature checking equipment, sanitizing trolleys. We've put perspex screens up between cashiers and members of staff. Lots of things we've done just to protect customers and staff, and they both appreciated that. We paid our staff more. We gave them a supplement just because we realised they were in the front line, and we wanted them at work as this huge demand shifted, and you know that there was huge toil in the store. As a business, I had to switch to agile management. What that meant was we more or less cancelled all the meetings we had planned. A lot of the projects we had planned, we just put on ice. We sent people home. We had to quickly align to working from home. and switch into projects that were so important and meaningful. I ran the business through WhatsApp from my home, actually very successfully, and people report that they saw and heard more of me during the last 3 months than they had in the year before. Just the ability to be flexible and connect with people very quickly. Our supply chain robustness was tested to its extreme. We have just started up our own distribution centre, luckily. Otherwise, suppliers were delivering direct to our stores, and suppliers got fed up with that and would rather not deliver to us but deliver to somebody else. So we quickly had to switch some suppliers to go through our depot. We didn't have time to negotiate any rates with them. They were just in, and just to secure supply. So stock became king. Those retailers with stock had high sales. Those without stock got a bloody nose, and customers disgruntled that somebody else had it but you didn't have it. Seizing the opportunities, so important to do things fast. So, for instance, we couldn't sell Easter eggs. We imported a lot of Easter eggs. Easter really flopped this year. The mood was gone in April. So we had a bit of a glut. We started discounting, but really we turned the Easter egg glut into opportunity. We took them to some children's homes and gifted to customers on certain weekends, and really got a lot of positive PR out of otherwise a problem product. We quickly got into online retailing. So as luck would have it, we'd hired 3 people to start that business in 6 months. And within 1 month, they'd managed to launch our first online operation. Other examples where we weren't so fast, we recognized too late that baking products, bread machines, and icing equipment was fast selling. We didn't have any stock, but we had tenants that were kitchen equipment suppliers that had to close. But by the time we'd unlocked their warehouses and brought their product into our business, it was too late. That moment had passed. So seizing opportunities fast, really important. We supported those less fortunate. So we were the only type of retailer active in the marketplace. We did feel fortunate. We were making good money during this time where others were losing their jobs or having to face pay cuts. So we really turned up our CSR program during this time. We gave food to the zoo. That became very popular. We enabled customers to donate to a charity that delivered food to the homeless, and that was very popular. So these things added to our brand and really teach us that CSR programs do carry some weight in how customers see the brand. And last but by no means least, be open and transparent. We had instances where customers were deemed or found to be COVID positive after they'd visited the store. And quickly we had to develop a program where we would shut that store that night once we found out, even though that event happened 3 or 4 days beforehand, alerted through social media and at the store what had happened, what we were doing. We cleaned overnight and we opened the next day. If staff were tainted, we would send them away to get tested, and only when they were proven to be negative, plus a certain period, would we allow them back into the store. Updating social media to explain what was going on, plus notices in the store. And I think we got a lot of plaudits about how we handled communication and really dealt with what was otherwise rumour and scare. We were transparent and told it how it was. So they were our lessons. Going on, a little bit about what we do with our business for INDENT. So if I could see the next slide, please. Yeah, so like I said earlier, we are quite strong in INDENT and import food. Currently, 4% of overall categories that do get import is the level we're at. So that's worth about 40 million ringgits a year. We're aiming to up that to 10% of the category sales, so that figure will only grow. We do see it as a point of difference. We do see it as something that brings customers to us and not to somebody else. And it's a differentiator versus hypermarkets and some of the smaller stores that can't carry the range. So that's really important to us. We've invested in a bigger import team. And their job is really to take a lot more risk than we have done in the past and really explore and expand some categories. And I go on in a minute to what those categories could be in the future. Right now, snacks and confectionery is the largest import category, followed by wholesome food, baby food and breakfast cereals is important, drinks and beverages, and like I mentioned earlier, baking and ready mix stuff and flours and flavourings is also another high import area. So they're the current areas. If I go on to the final slide, which starts to talk about what next after COVID-19 and what trends are we detecting even at this early stage. I think first and foremost right now, safety. Customers don't care about service. How they see is good service, they see as safety. So we want to make our stores the safest stores and the most safe feeling stores in the marketplace. Secondly, certainty of product. So ensuring that supply chain doesn't run dry, that we get enough product coming through our supply channels in time to meet the expectations is really, really important right now. And then only after those does price become a factor. In the last 3 months, we actually switched off all our price promotions and event theming, and we did the best sales that we've done in the history of our business. So it just shows at the moment price is not sensitive, but I think in the future price will become very, very sensitive. So we have to watch that very carefully. Like I mentioned, cooking and baking and the hobby of cooking has become a bigger factor in people's lives, and I don't think that's going to disappear overnight. And I think we have a great opportunity to explore and expand some of our categories to cater for this enthusiasm and this interest. Linked to that, there's less eating out at the moment. There's less late night activities going on in Malaysia, and more people are eating at home, and that's a rekindling of an old tradition, and maybe that's a trend that a lot of people found that positive and will continue to do so. We do see a trend towards health and wellness. Immunity foods took off very, very strongly. And generally people have taken this time, when they have been stuck at home and put on weight, now they're emerging, they're realizing that what they eat does affect them greatly. And our stores are seen as, as probably the best places to go for a greater choice around health and wellness foods. And also ready to eat and ready to cook. So those that are less keen on cooking and baking as a hobby want the food at home, but don't want to go through the effort to make it. So frozen ready meals really took off, and that's something as a category we want to explore and expand on. But equally, ready to eat is also an area where coming into the store and taking away, not spending any time either in a restaurant and you can eat at your workplace or whatever, is another area that we're going to be looking to exploit going forward. And I think really, whilst price wasn't the critical issue of the last few months, going forward, I think value is so important. People will have less money to spend. They will want good value for what they're spending, but they are willing to spend up and get a better quality offering. So I think that quality value mix, we're not going to be fighting on price, but we've got to make sure that what we do offer does have a good quality and a value association to it. So that's what I see as the major trends. I think what I would say is that those trends do fit well with a greater import strategy, and certainly the ranges that the UK can supply us do fit. These are core growth categories in the UK, and so the learnings and the development has happened, and I think there are products that we can tap into and bring in and widen our ranges in these areas. So I do see greater opportunity in the future. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. Next slide, please, just to confirm that. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. I'll now hand you over to Phil Walker of Christie International. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geoff. It was very interesting. I've been making copious notes. Good morning or good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are. As Geoff said, my name is Phil Walker from Christie International. Just show us the next slide, please. There's just a couple of points that I'm going to try and run through today within the allotted time, hopefully, and it will be interesting and informative, but with the caveat that this is from our perspective as a company, not necessarily the general perspective. So the next slide, please. We represent a selection of SME brands from the UK. We are an outsourced export development management team. So this would be stepping in and working in partnership with brands who either have no export department or who have a small export department, and we work in partnership to develop their business in partnership with them. So you'll see there's a nice selection there of food and non-food, and different price points and different categories are covered. So next slide, please. As a business, we have 5 key areas of operation. Working with the brand owners, our MO is to have remove the complexity of exporting. So we would work with the brand owner to manage their export sale from factory gate right the way through to going on shelf in a retailer such as Riley's Grocer or else in other parts of the world. Working in partnership with our importer and distributor, we would then offer them a basket of products so they can tick a lot of boxes or cover development and growth for their category, sourcing that from one source rather than having to have numerous sources to draw product from. As I say, we manage the logistics from factory gate to store shelf. We can also carry out some product adjustment, so we can make sure products are fit for market with labelling or repacking. And our final aspect would be with some private label development. So yeah, we work in strong partnership with a number of retailers around the world and supply them with food and non-food private label. Next slide, please. So just to highlight our reach globally, as I mentioned, we work in typically non-EU markets, because up to very recently, those markets were quite relatively straightforward to export into. So we would step into the space for an export for a brand owner where perhaps the markets are difficult for entry for various reasons. And as you can see, we are well represented within markets around the globe. Next slide, please. So focusing in on the ASEAN region, we've worked since the last 2 or 3 years. We worked very closely with Paul and his team, and through that, the DIT as well, and also the local chambers. Obviously, we've partnered very closely with the Malaysian chamber, and this time last year, we were participating in the trade show at the MIFB, which was very successful for us, and managed to get a new listing on the back of that within a major retailer. So you can see there the operations where we are active in the region, and this has been primarily through our engagement with Paul's team and the local chambers. Next slide, please. As a sort of an overview of the grocery retail market within Malaysia, we're engaging with a number of these players, including Geoff's business. But it's a well-developed market, and again you can see there's a range of store types and retail channels that are covered, from major grocery, convenience store, etc. Next slide, please. And then just to show where we are in terms of our presence within the market, we have a nice spread across the food and non-food products. As I say, we've got listings in all the major retailers. They're all in your stores, Geoff, apart from the partridges. So again, yeah, we can see that we hit a number of different price points and positionings to encapsulate the market as a whole. Next slide, please. So this preempted our sort of interest in the market. So we're obviously we've been doing research for a number of months and what have you to get into and understand what's happening. The big caveat here is that this research was done pre-COVID, and I think this does cover some of the points that Geoff was alluding to in his presentation in terms of how the research was showing that retail was in that sort of upper premium sector that online services were developing, and supermarkets were taking the best from the other channels, such as the convenience. Next slide, please. So we, oh, sorry, bear with me. So the second bit of research we carried out was, again, pre-COVID, but again, as Geoff has mentioned, has been backed up by what's been happening. So ourselves and our distributor, we've identified, as we see, the sort of the key areas that where we're seeing some opportunity and where we can build on our existing presence. So these are categories which are very familiar, certainly here in the UK, and we're seeing Malaysia and other parts of ASEAN and other markets that are becoming more focused. So they're the usual suspects being gluten, sugar-free, vegan, keto, organic, and the ethnically manufactured products. Fair trade is a great example of that. Partridges has some very good fair trade products within the range. So that's why we're looking to sort of evolve our business along those lines. Next slide, please. So sort of bringing it a bit more up to date then, and this was some of the sort of the research that myself and our distributor were coming up with. And funny enough, it mirrors pretty much exactly what Geoff has just been saying. So it's nice to know that we're picking up the same vibes and trends that one of our major customers is. Interestingly, food category, baking products were very strong. Not unsurprisingly, the non-food area, so antibacterial, disinfectant wipes, hand washes, personal care products, those were understandably interesting, leading sellers. We had some supply chain issues with this as well. So in terms of trying to meet the demand, and mostly we managed it. I think 95% of the time we did, which is not bad in supermarket fulfillment. Online shopping, we've seen that increase again, as Geoff has mentioned. And actually going to the supermarket was still, was probably one of the things that we were allowed to do in various parts of the world. And so people were taking that opportunity to go to the shop and everything that sort of became involved in that. So that's sort of, those were our understandings from our perspective of the market. Next slide, please. So really, as I say, we've been able to identify a number of opportunities, we think, coming out of the current situation, and in a way of able to manage and refocus our business along those lines. So working in partnership with our excellent distributor, we'll be looking to maximize the retail opportunities both in store and online, picking up on the shift towards the medium premium retail shopping experience. I think once the malls are open in a greater extent, or as they are becoming, I think that sort of shopping experience will return. The free from categories, so focusing on those. We've got a great quinoa range as well, Geoff, which could be interesting. That we're seeing some traction in other markets in the region. But so that covers the free from and also the home baking. And as I say, really sort of, we've taken the opportunity whilst we've been in lockdown here to really sort of think of how the best ways that we can work with our distributor, but also their customers and then the consumer, to try and refocus the attention and work on the brands and the opportunities that will deliver for everybody within the chain, from consumer, retailer, importer, distributor, ourselves, and the brand owner. So hopefully, I think that's a quick 10 minutes. And I think that's just to say, I think that's the last slide. Is that the next slide? Thank you. And if anybody wants to sort of catch up with me in more detail afterwards, my contact details are on the screen. I'm sure they'll be shared as well afterwards. But if anybody wants to reach me through the chamber, I'm more than happy to pick up with any dialogue after the event. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and it's been an honour to participate. And if I can just hand over now to Vic.
Hey, thank you, Phil. Good morning. to everyone here in the UK. Good afternoon to everyone back home in Malaysia. I say back home because I'm a Malaysian myself, but I live here and work here now. So Jennifer, thanks a lot for inviting Santander to speak today. I think the webinar is happening at a very timely time since the UK has been in lockdown in the second half of March. Santander here, we spent a lot of time helping our clients access financial assistance from the government. But over the last month or so, conversations with clients have moved away from financial assistance to where is that opportunity? So companies are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel or learning how to live with COVID here in the UK. And we are getting a lot of inquiries now as to where is that opportunity? How can we grow international? So I think it's very timely we are having this conversation today. Next slide, please. Just a bit of I want to start off by a brief introduction to Santander, some highlight numbers as to our presence, how big we are. We are obviously a Spanish headquartered bank. We are very strong in Latin America, and we have a very strong presence here in the UK. The stat that I want to draw your attention to is in the bottom left corner of the slide. So in 2019, we've supported 5,600 businesses from their light bulb moment through to starting up, scaling up, and beyond. Now, this is what we as a bank do very differently. We try and we do our best to work with companies in order to help them grow, help them get bigger, help them get international. Banking's moving away from a conversation of how can we sell you a financial product for a fee and for a competitive price, as to now we want to engage companies to say, look, if you are making X amount of money, how can we help you go up 5 to 10%? We can do that by helping you get international, getting into a new market. And instead of telling you where that opportunity is, we want to tell you how you're going to go about accessing that opportunity and how we are going to help you access that opportunity. So that's the differentiating factor that we do. Just put that into a bit of context. How many banks here in the UK are actually thinking about things like that, about how they can help the customers get international and want to engage with businesses as to your business development and your growth? It's at the heart of our strategy. It's in the heart of our company's DNA. And we spend a lot of time talking to companies about how they can grow their business instead of selling them a financial product. Next slide, please. We don't have a presence in Southeast Asia. So in order to overcome, and we do not intend to have a presence, what we've done is we have decided to partner up with like-minded banks that have a deep-rooted local presence in their home markets. So in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia particularly, we partner with CIMB. So we do a lot of work with CIMB in the Islamic I'll go on to talk about Halal, and also in the corporate and commercial side, focusing on the non-Islamic side of the world. This then evolved into a much wider consortium, and it led us to being part of a consortium of 14 different banks in different parts of the world. And all of these banks have come together under what is known as the Trade Club Alliance. The main principle or the main concept behind this is the greatest asset that a bank has is its pool of clients, but it is an asset that we cannot have on our balance sheet. We've come together with banks in order to see how we can leverage that asset that we have, get our clients speaking to one another, and how they can leverage one another to become international. There is going to, I say, look at it best. It's two ways to look at it. On an offline perspective, you talk to bankers such as myself, I speak to my counterparts in CIMB, and we see how we can connect businesses. The end game of it all is we're building out a comprehensive online offering where different banks will be able to load their members onto a platform where members will be able to connect with one another in a more virtual setting, and bankers will then take a step back and let businesses interact one another. The idea behind that is, in order to be part of that platform, you need to be a customer of a bank. So you have gone through your KYC check. So when you're engaging with somebody, let's say in South Africa, in Malaysia, in Korea, or in Japan, you know that it's a legitimate company that has been through a rigorous KYC check by a bank. Next slide, please. In order to, I mentioned ecosystem earlier. So we work with different partners and different organizations. So we work very closely with Paul and the UK-ASEAN Business Council. Santander is a partner organization of theirs, and these are some of the other organizations that we work with. Next slide, please. I mentioned CIMB, so for those that are not very familiar with CIMB, I've included this slide to show a bit of presence and a bit of scale as to who CIMB is in Malaysia. So CIMB are the second largest bank by assets in Malaysia. They have a great presence in Indonesia. CIMB Niaga is a fully owned subsidiary, which happens to also be the 5th largest bank in Indonesia by assets. They have a presence across many ASEAN countries, a branch in the UK. So this is just to show you that our partner is truly ingrained in the fabric of all things ASEAN and have a very good spread and very good coverage around the region. Next slide, please. So my topic of conversation today is meant to be halal. And before I get into the details around halal and our plans and what we're doing, I want to take a step back first and say that, you know, I do not close myself up to having a conversation around different things. I think later on we will see when Andrew speaks that my food and drink sector head, he's going to talk about health and well-being and frozen foods and how we see that industry growing. The reason we've decided to focus on halal today is CIMB, our partner bank, is doing a fantastic job in the halal trade in Malaysia. Malaysia is seen as the gold standard of halal certification in the world. They are many years ahead of countries like the UK in terms of halal certification and halal standards. CIMB, being the bank that they are, they drive that halal trade from a private sector standpoint. So every time the Malaysian government tries to get halal trade out to China, out to Japan for the Olympics, CIMB are front and center of that. We were looking initially to build a consortium of companies from the UK to attend MIHAS, which is the largest halal trade show held in the world in Malaysia. It was meant to be the beginning of April, has been postponed. CIMB are the main sponsors of that show. However, what we are going to do now is, because we feel that even if the show goes ahead in the last quarter of the year, we feel that it's not fair, it is not the right thing to ask people to travel from here, from the UK. So we're in conversation right now with CIMB and some of their local clients and their local partners to see how we can offer British businesses virtual connectivity events. How can we get you sitting here in the UK, speaking to potential partners that you want to do business with in Malaysia, buyers, distributors of that range. So if you are interested, whether it is in halal trade or in non-halal trade, please do get in touch, let us know, and we will look to include you in the plans that we do when we get that into place. Next slide, please. Over to Andrew.
Vic, I think Andrew has been disconnected again.
Okay, no problem. I will do his slides then. So sorry about that. Sorry about that. Andrew is our sector head for food and drink. So Andrew, what we do at Santander differently than other banks is, you know, we have what I call sort of trident approach to banking. You have people, your traditional bankers who look at the relationship and manage the relationship on a day-to-day basis. You have people like myself who lead particular trade corridors and regions, who have a link to that region. I can have first-hand knowledge about the region. And then you have people like Andrew, who are people who are bankers. Some of Andrew's peers are non-bankers, but have spent their career in the industry. So they can relate when we are talking to a British business, let's say in manufacturing, and he talks about supply chain problems that he's facing. It would not make much sense to me, but it will make a lot of sense to my sector head because he's been across the table in the CEO of the FD's position before. What you see on this slide is a certain trends as to where the UK is currently exporting its food. So if you look in the middle, you know, Ireland, the United States, Europe, France, Netherlands, Germany, Spain are sort of the key trend areas, you know, and it's rightly so. I think the stats here do not surprise most of us. When a business first thinks about getting out of the UK, Europe is obviously an attraction purely due to geographical reasons, it's the closest. The US is obviously the main price with the size of the market. When you think about Asia Pacific, China always comes up first because of population, because of the market, its links to the UK. Having said that, I think ASEAN is not featured much here. Singapore is the only ASEAN country on this list. There is, when I talk to businesses, there is still that drive, there is still that intention to get out to ASEAN. So I think all of us on this call, ourselves, the chamber, Phil, we all play a role here in helping. We want to see ASEAN countries feature more heavily here, and we want to help British businesses get out into that parts of the world. And lastly, as I mentioned, we may be looking at halal as a focus because we have CIMB as a partner, but we are seeing a huge drive in health and well-being and frozen food. Andrew has been quite heavily involved in, we have a cohort of companies in health and well-being going out to France, going out to the Middle East. Andrew's been at Gulf Foods, looking at how we can work with frozen food distributors in the Middle East. So there's a lot of things where we are seeing a lot of demand in health and well-being and frozen food into different parts of the world. And it is a very much a growing sector here in the UK, and also an area of focus for Santander now and in the months ahead. Next slide, please. So building on when I mentioned earlier, how I have a bunch of partners that I work with in my ecosystem for companies that are interested in Malaysia. Andrew's partners are very much focused on the sector. He has the Food and Drink Federation, British Frozen Food Federation, the FDEA, the Exporters Association, and ESMA. And these are the guys that Andrew spends a lot of time working with, speaking with on a day-to-day basis, and all conversations revolve around how can we as a bank do things differently? How can we help British businesses get out of the UK into other parts of the world? So next slide, please. So this is us. So that's me and that's Andrew. Yeah, our contact details. And if what we say is of interest, you would like to know more, you want to have a conversation, let us know. Please do reach out. We're always happy to speak to anyone if it's an inquiry or if you need some help, you need some advice, some guidance. As I stated, our partners can always speak to us, speak to CIMB. I truly believe what we have is quite a unique differentiator. Not many banks out there are thinking about how they can help businesses grow and get international. That is really at the heart of the strategy. So please do take us up on the offer and do reach out and let us know how we could be of assistance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to all our speakers. We do have a couple of questions for our speakers. And if you have any more questions, you can always raise it in the Q&A box below. Okay, so for this first question, I think this one is something regarding the halal sector. So perhaps Vic could be able to answer this. Okay, so the question is it vital for products containing meat in Malaysia to be halal?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
No, it most certainly is. Look, I think when you think about, I always tell businesses this, in Malaysia, halal is important in terms of a certification, in terms of to get into the market and to target consumers. But Malaysia has a population of Chinese and Indians as well, that halal certification is not, they don't look at products that have to be halal. But you need to think about Malaysia as a launch pad into the wider ASEAN market. Now, if you look at Malaysia and you want to go into ASEAN, you look at Indonesia, you need halal certification in order to get into Asia. So I would say it most certainly is important that you have that certification for Malaysia and for the wider ASEAN region.
Yeah. So I just want to, give my point here as I actually take on the food and drink sector here in Malaysia. Yes, halal certification is definitely a plus point if you are bringing your products, especially food, into Malaysia. However, it is not 100% compulsory because there are still products in Malaysia that are non-halal. Okay, so if that answers the question. For the second question is, this other question, how important is environmentally friendly packaging in Malaysia? Would Geoff or perhaps Phil be able to answer this?
I can have a go and Phil can chip in after me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly important, and people are becoming increasingly aware as the plastics issue gets wider sort of PR and exposure in the media. We took a stance this year to be plastic free by the end of 2023. We thought it was important to do something bold, and really we're looking at the wrapping that we have around our produce, the containers in our meat and fish and our bakery packaging, and trying to eliminate plastic from all those situations. We won't be able to eliminate plastic from every supplier's product. That's for a supplier to work on themselves, but we will be highlighting the suppliers that have gone the extra mile to do something. So we have washing up liquids that have come from recycled plastics, and we have other examples that we're showcasing those around the store. And as that becomes more important, we can put a little bit more exposure and push in those areas.
Yes, and I think to follow up, I think with our sort of half of suppliers hat on, certainly suppliers in the UK that we work with are fully embracing the packaging question that's mentioned, because there's a need for that in UK retail. So as we're exporting UK products, then that will develop anyway. And then as the more forward-thinking retailers such as Geoff's are obviously going to be benefiting from that, as are the consumers. So I think it's a natural progression, and because it's a global question, and it's a global issue that we're all addressing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Samantha, just to add really quickly behind that, I think, as a country, if I look at what our partner bank CIMB are doing in terms of, being more environmental friendly, eco-friendly, they also have, they've put aside like 3 billion ringgit to have sustainability linked loans to companies in the country. So and this happened last year. I think a couple of years ago, it wouldn't have been a key priority of a Malaysian bank, but now banks are coming up with products in Asia in order to help companies be more sustainable, be more eco-friendly, and there's an allocation of money put aside in order to help that cause. So I think it is very much important. It's very much at the forefront of mind of businesses locally.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's another question. So this one goes to Geoff. Okay, so do you see a very significant rise of dark stores and home delivery because based on the current situation?
So home delivery, yes. Lots of people have got into the home delivery game very quickly. Others that were already there have done really well. We had a bad experience actually with our home delivery. We had an aggregator that we did in Malaysia that does it for us, called Happy Fresh. And we felt that their business would absolutely ramp up during the first 2 months, and it collapsed. All the riders disappeared. They didn't want to do the picking. They couldn't access the stores. And so that their model fell apart, and it's only now is it picking back up together and rebuilding and getting back to where it used to be. So other people are doing different things. There is a dark store operator I know that's growing, but isn't going to rewrite the world, I don't think, in Malaysia. Lazada are trying to get into food retail home delivery. And I saw Alibaba have just built a huge warehouse next to the airport to help with e-commerce. So it's an area that is going to transform. I think we're on the cusp of a major major change to the way Malaysians buy product. I always think food and fresh food comes last, but that's not to say it can't be done. And we've got our best brains working on it as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Geoff. Okay, so we have a question for Phil. What challenges have you faced in exporting to Malaysia?
At the moment, touch wood, very few. We work in partnership with a very good importer distributor. We have a very good freight forwarder we work with. We have some very good supply partners who provide all the documentation we require. So luckily, there's no product adjustment required, so we don't need to label any products at this stage. It's relatively straightforward. There's an element of paperwork, I think, prior to a little bit of government registration, but that's handled by the distributor very efficiently. So I must admit, we don't really have any major issues. I'm probably tempting fate there now, and we've got some orders waiting to go already now with the freight forwarder to sail out to our distributor early next week. So yeah, it's relatively straightforward, and I think that's the appeal about this market in particular and the region as a whole. From our company perspective, it's a relatively straightforward process to have product arrive in market, more so than perhaps other markets or other regions where you do need some labelling and that there's some more onerous pre-market registration, etc., etc.
Okay.
So,
Thank
I
you very
can only
much.
speak from our experience.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we have another question on the halal sector. So the question is, how complicated is the halal certification procedures and process? This is for Vic.
So it all depends on the supply chain. Complication, cost of getting halal certification, time to get halal certification depends on the supply chain. If you have a couple of products and your supply chain is relatively straightforward, I was told by the halal certification bodies here in the UK that it could take about 3 to 4 weeks, cost you £2,000 to £3,000, right? However, the more products there are, the more complicated the supply chain is, the more, if it's international markets, things come in from overseas, get into your supply chain. The added complexity, the more costly, the more time consuming. So it's a very, very tough question to answer, but the factors to think about is number of products and complexity of supply chain. That is the two determining factors to understand.
Okay, thank you very much, Vic. Okay, so this other question is for Geoff again. Is energy efficiency and monitoring a key focus, or does it matter less in Malaysia where low consumer awareness and low energy prices?
So my view is that carbon footprint is less important than plastics to the consumer in Malaysia, which is why we chose plastic reduction rather than low emissions. In terms of our energy usage, a big part of our energy consumption is on refrigeration, and we look at trying to get the most energy efficient equipment possible. The other big part of energy in retailing is air conditioning, but our landlords pay for that and handle that, so that's not really in our focus. So that's why energy consumption efficiency is not so critical.
Okay, thank you very much, Geoff. Okay, so so far I think we have this one last question here. I will open this to all the speakers. I mean, if anyone has any insights to add on. Okay, so the question is, for food manufacturing in general, is it probable that there will be a higher degree of automation and trying to remove human handling and thus reduce disease transmission risks? Would Geoff or Andrew, is anyone happy to answer this one?
I won't be the best expert. I think this is more of a food manufacturing question.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, Samantha.
You,
and apologies for my connection issues. Better late than never, I guess, and technology is not my strong point. So hopefully Vic covered the slides earlier, and again, my apologies. Coming back to this question, I think automation is going to be very high on the agenda going forward. We've seen in the UK that because of coronavirus and the demands at retailers, many manufacturers are expected to ramp up production to about 170% of normal levels on average. Now, those businesses that were automated in some shape were obviously more able to cope with those demands. And of course, if you then factor in reliance on manpower and what something like a pandemic can do to workforce, I think it will accelerate automation going forward, and that's something we're discussing with the trade associations back in the UK. And as a bank, of course, we're well placed to help those investments in automation. So I think discussions going forward around mitigating the risk for businesses will include very high on agenda how they automate and become more efficient for their production.
Sorry. Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. If there are no more questions, then we will be ending the session here. However, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our speakers, Geoff, Phil, Vic, Andrew, Paul, and Jennifer for providing insights on the opportunities and outlook of the food and drink sector here in Malaysia. Thank you all for an excellent session and support. So we shall meet again next week on 2nd July 2020 for another BMCC trade webinar on the changing face of higher education post-COVID-19. Thank you to all our participants. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.